everyone. Before we start the module, I first wanted to introduce myself. My name is Denise Castro, and for my whole career, I've been working in marketing. Previously, I worked in Unilever as the assistant brand manager of Tresemme, and currently, I'm the brand manager of Snail White and Do Daydream Philippines. So today, we'll be talking about a topic that's very dear to my heart, something that I deal with almost every day of my life, and I'm sure you do as well. Today, we're going to talk about social media. In particular, how do we establish a strong social media presence? So, what kind of content can we release online that would prove effective and relevant for our business? Before we start with the actual lesson and the concepts, I want you to first stop, to pause, and to think about the following questions. So the first is, how many hours a day do you spend on social media? Ako personally, I know I could spend like hours on social media, not just for work but for leisure as well. I know like it's so addicting and there's so much for me to see. The next question is, what was the first social media platform you joined? I actually don't know the exact year when social media um, was created, but the first interaction I had was in Friendster back when I was, I think, a teenager. So eventually, since then, I moved on from Friendster, which is now defunct. I've created my Facebook account, my Instagram account, Twitter, and currently I downloaded TikTok just to explore the different trends. So, what about you? What was your first encounter? And what made it so addictive and entertaining for you? Lastly, I want you to think about what kind of content you consider as thumb stopping. So, what do I mean by thumb stopping? What is that piece of content, that post, that photo, that video that made you stop scrolling, even just for a few seconds, and think and really observe, read the caption, maybe interact? So, what kind of content is thumb stopping for you? So now that you've answered those questions, I think it's very evident that social media really plays a huge role in our lives, not just in our personal lives, but of course for our businesses. So everyone talks about social media. There's a lot of tips, there are a lot of videos on YouTube teaching you how to best maximize your social media accounts. There's a lot of information to digest, and because it's social media, it's digital, it's ever changing. There's new information every day. But honestly, it's really very simple, and it of course boils down into how well you know your brand and how well you know your audience. So first, parang we have to consider like what amount of time and resources you will spend on social media. And for me as a brand manager, I know that we spend a lot of resources, a lot of time posting, creating content, studying the insights that we gather because we know that social media is really a big push for our business. So, what are the different benefits ba of social media and why you should prioritize it in your business? So, the first is quite obvious. It really is your main way of increasing brand awareness. And at the same time, if I may say, it's the most cost effective way. So, versus before, the years before, the only way you could advertise your brand is probably through print and TV and radio. So those days are gone. Now we have social media, which is free for use for almost everyone in the Philippines. We have one of the highest Facebook penetration rates. So we have this tool, and it's new. There are a lot of new ways that you can utilize it, a lot of new tools as well. So this for me is the easiest, quote unquote, and cheapest way to put your brand out there. The second is, it humanizes your brand. So the main role of social media is really to curate content and to serve it to your audience. So with that, you're really able to humanize your brand. You're not just a logo, you're not just a celebrity, you're really able to speak to your customers through your social media. Third, you're able to establish your brand as a reliable thought leader. So let's say that you work in health, in a health company. So let's say you sell health insurance. So your social media can be a way for you to establish that you are reliable, that you know your stuff, and that people can trust you. So that's the main way that you can show people that. Next, it can really increase your traffic. So, related to that, if you increase your traffic, you can generate leads and eventually increase your sales. So, right now, if you think about it, how do you really get to a brand page? How do you go to an e commerce site? And for me, usually, and I know for a lot of people, I get to a landing page from a social media feed. So, I would usually see an ad on Facebook, an ad on Instagram or Twitter. I'd click on it, and that's how I'm led to the brand page. So, with that said, I'm sure a lot of people, in terms of the consumer journey, that's also one of their main points of contact. Next, you're able to gauge sentiment around your brand. So, on social media, you're not just there to talk, you're also there to listen. And what's great about social media is everything is quantifiable, everything is visible to the public, it's right there. And a lot of social media channels even have different analytics tools that you can make use of to make this easier. Lastly, of course, you can learn more about your customers. So, like I said, you should also listen and really not just use social media as a publishing tool, but use it also to your own advantage to mine all these different insights. I'm sure most of you already have your own social media accounts for your own businesses. However, like I said, digital is ever changing. So, how can you optimize your social media accounts? How can you maximize all the tools? How can you really make it work for your business? So, I outlined here 3 steps to take to optimize and to establish your strong social media presence. So, the first is conducting a social media audit. So, as with any research project, first you have to gather data, and this is really the point of this whole step, to gather data to get your actionable insights. Second, you need to establish your social media voice and tone. So, this is actually, I think, the fun part. So, I know as a brand, you probably already have your brand positioning, you probably already have your reasons to believe. So, now it's all about translating all of that into something that your audience can understand through social media. Lastly, it's all about crafting your content bucket. So this is where most of your time will be spent. Um, how do you plot your content mix? How do you know what type of content to post out there? What's the schedule? What's the ratio of posts that you should post on your social media? So that's where this step comes in. So, with all of that, just 3 steps, you can actually work your way towards establishing a strong social media presence. So, for the first step, which is all about conducting a social media audit, there are different ways that you can go about it, and I suggest that you do all. So, it's all about looking within and looking outside. So, looking within means that you first have to start with your existing efforts. I'm sure you're already using the social media channels, so take a step back and look at what you've already accomplished. Ask yourself what's working, what's not working, and look at your existing audience on your social media. So if you go to Facebook or Instagram, that information is actually readily available through the Insights tool. So you can look at that, and then based on what you see, do you think that the current audience that's on your social media page, is it aligned with your actual target market? The next is about creating audience personas. So this is kind of like stalking your target market. And as we all know, the best way to stalk is by searching and learning about them on social media. So it's really, really important to know who your audience is, because your content buckets, all of that will depend on what your audience, what they actually wanna hear. So, for example, you can look at your current followers, click one of the profiles there, and check what type of content do they like, what type of content do they comment on or share. So this knowledge will really be important in turning your fans into eventually customers. Lastly, you can look outside, look at your competitors. So, like they say, the best inspiration can actually be found in your competitors. So, it's not really copying them, but looking at their best practices, looking and examining what's their edge ba? What are they doing that you're not? What are they doing that's proving to be very effective? So you really need to understand your competition to know how you can rise above the clutter. There's so much clutter on social media. Every second that you refresh your feed, something new pops out. So how do you make sure that your brand is able to rise above that, and of course rise above the competition, and give you and really differentiate you as a brand? So now what I actually wanna give you are some useful questions, some useful templates that you can use in doing your social media audit. So for getting to know your audience, these are basically like the basic questions that you can ask. So what's their age? Where do they live? What languages do they speak? Kasi if they only speak English, then maybe you shouldn't be speaking Taglish in your captions, and vice versa. How much do they earn? Do you think that they have the purchasing power to buy your products? If you're about to launch a new product, do you think that it's something they can afford? Yeah, how much they spend, how much they buy, what they do in their spare time, and what stage of life they're in. So, some other tips din naman is also to analyze, yun nga, the website and social media analytics, checking the insights button. Next is also really being clear about the value of your products and services for your audience persona. If you're gonna do paid ads, which is another topic, you can test your ads on the different audience personas that you've created. And lastly, marketing is all about optimizing. So you can identify a specific persona now that you might discover in the future might not work anymore or might not be buying your products anymore. So it's also all about discovering new prospective audiences. So here's a template that I found online, which you can actually use. Almost the same questions as the ones in the previous slide, but some additional ones like what are their favorite social networks, what's their buying behavior, what's the size of the business, purchasing barriers. So this one is very tied into the actual concept of determining your target market. So these things, sometimes you can find most of the answers to the questions online. Here naman is another template that you can use in doing your competitor scan. So in doing your competitor scan, it's actually pretty straightforward. So you can identify 3 to 5 main competitors, and then fill in the details. So what are the links to their accounts? Are they even present in all accounts? How active are they? How many posts a month do they post? How many followers do they have? What's their audience growth rate? So it could be like how many new followers do they get on average every month. I'm not sure if you can get this, but sometimes you can also see like how many people message them, how quickly they respond to the messages on their profile. Lastly, you can also do trends listening. So, trends can come in different forms. You can look back or you can look forward. So, looking back is more of social media monitoring. So, social media monitoring is knowing what people think of your brand. So, this one, you can actually gather information through your previous customers, and look at how they perceive your brand, what are the different impressions of it. The next is looking forward, which is social listening. So you can actually monitor channels, for example, on Twitter. If you want to search how many people are talking about your brand, just go to the search bar, type your brand. If you want, you can also search the hashtags to see how many people tag you in the hashtag section. So that's an easy way of capturing the mentions of your brand. You can also do it for your competitors and see like what are they saying about your competitors. You can also analyze those mentions, and identify what you should do next. So this is basically your guiding information as you craft your social media strategy. After you do those 3 steps of the social media audit, these are the things that you should be able to answer. So the first is, what are the gaps in our social presence based on audience survey and competitor analysis? Second is, what key takeaways can I apply to my business or company? So, as an example, for example, I see na my main competitor is actually on Twitter and it has a lot of followers on Twitter, but on Instagram, konti lang. So, you can go about it two ways. Either you go directly head on Twitter, steal their Twitter followers or their share of voice, or you can actually go on Instagram and explode your brand on that platform where your competitor isn't. Another thing is like for example, your audience, you discover na they're really into Lazada 1111, Shopee 1010. They're big fans of those sales. So that being said, then you know that you should participate in those sale campaigns and you should give generous discounts during those days because it's something that your audience or target market looks forward to. Now we move on to the next section, which is all about establishing your brand, voice, and tone. But before that, another question for you to ponder on. Think of your brand's personality. If it was a celebrity or public figure, who would that be? So if you're able to answer that, I think it's a good jumping off point in establishing your brand voice and tone on social media. If you're able to identify that person and that person's characteristics, then this can be your guiding principles in crafting your content buckets and even your caption. So, with that in your mind all the time as you make your content, it will be something that's very cohesive and something that will really stick to your audience. So now I've listed here some tips, some principles that you can use in establishing your brand voice and tone on social media. So the first is being consistent across social channels. Because there are so many social media channels, it's possible that the people making content on your Facebook are not the same people making your content on Instagram. So if that's the case, then you need to make sure that the tone, the voice, the the captions that they post and the images that they post are still somehow aligned, are still somehow consistent. So you need to get on the same wavelength and consistently push the same brand voice and tone for it to be remembered by your audience. The next is drop the drama. So, a lot of brands and marketers would usually write sensational headlines to catch attention. So, in YouTube, sometimes you read a title of a video, but then you watch the video, you're halfway in, and you realize, bakit parang hindi naman totoo yung title? Parang na-clickbait lang ako into watching this. So, imagine how annoyed you would feel. So, even with you and your posts, your brand's posts on social media, then you need to make sure that when people click on your post, when they click on your link, then they need to get what they are expecting. Next is write like you talk, aka avoid jargon. Because we work in business, some of you might have a business background. You might be used to all of these marketing terms that you might be surprised to know your audience actually doesn't know. So it's possible that these fancy terms that you are so familiar with, it might lead onto your captions and to your images, and it might create a barrier for your brand and your audience. So remember that everything that you do is to connect with your audience. So if you say jargon that alienates your audience, then they would probably feel like they can't relate or that nagbabagaling ka or you're trying to sound too intelligent for them. So you need to take it down and really take it down to a level that your audience would understand. So a lot of the brands that I've worked with also before, they have really good brand books. So they have really good positioning, really good reasons to believe. But these things, sometimes the way they're worded only works for internal purposes. So for you to translate that into your social media is different naman. You really need to change up the wording. But at the same time, keep the essence of what your brand really stands for. Lastly, it's all about listening and responding. So, like I keep saying, social media, you're not just there to talk, but you're also there to listen. So, posting is good, but engaging is better. So, if you get chance upon comments on your post, always reply. So, try your best to always reply. And that way, your audience will feel like you're really listening to them. And from there, social media can be a tool for you to actually communicate with them, connect with them, learn more about them. So I hope that the tips and principles that I shared will really help you to cement your brand's tone and voice on social media. So now we move on to the next step, which is all about creating a posting schedule and plotting your content mix. So, in terms of posting schedule and posting frequency, there is no hard rule about it. Um, there is no official um, official number for how many posts you should post. But the main question you should answer is how many posts should I post on each of my social media channels? So this is something that you will need to answer by yourself. This is something that you'll learn through time, by experimenting, by testing and learning. You'll really definitely arrive on an answer eventually, hopefully. So it's really important though to set a posting schedule. So for you to rise above the clutter on social media and for you to actually be in the favor of the algorithms, you need to post frequently. So for me, like okay, based on the different brands that I've handled in the past, um, they'd usually post at least 3 times a week. So if you can, maybe this could be your minimum. Some brands post every day, but then this again, like I said, is a number that you'll need to discover yourself. But I think it's important that at least at the start, you try to stick to a posting schedule. So that will really help you space out your messaging effectively, and really help you to manage your content production. So now we move on to the funner side of this whole process. So this one is all about plotting your content mix. Now that you've done your social media audit, now that you've established your tone of voice, how then do you translate it into actual content? So I'll be sharing with you 3 frameworks that we usually use in crafting the content buckets for our brands. So the first is the 80-20 rule. This one I think is the most straightforward, the simplest, and it says that 80% of your posts should inform, educate, or entertain your audience, and 20% should be to directly promote your brand. This all ties back to the consumer insight that people are on social media because they want to be entertained, they want to be relaxed, they want to be informed, they want to be educated. So if you're a brand and all you talk about are your products or why your brand is so great, then no one would want to follow you. So people would want to follow you because they want to add additional value into their whole social media experience. So you need to make sure that you follow through with that and give them posts that they would actually want to see or to read about. The next framework is the rule of thirds. So this one says that 1/3 of your post should be used to promote your business. 1/3 should be posts of ideas from influencers in your industry. And 1/3 should be posts of personal stories to build your brand. So if I think about it, the first third is similar to the 20% in the previous framework. So these are the posts that would talk about your brand, product centric, ingredient focused, benefit focused. The next third is, for example, if you contract an Instagram macro influencer to post about your brand and you share it, it would fall under that. Then lastly, personal stories would mean testimonials and reviews from your previous customers, good ones of course, that would convince people to eventually try your brand as well. Now, I'm going to share with you another framework that we usually use in crafting our content, which is called the Triple H framework. Triple H stands for Hero, Hub, and Hygiene. I'll go through each one by one. So you have your hero. Hero is basically your big bang, go big content piece. Usually it's the content piece that anchors all your other content for that period. The main objective of a hero content is really to deliver massive awareness, and really hopefully bring authority back to your brand. So this one, some examples of it include a key visual. So this is, for example, a photo, um, of your endorser of your food or your product or anything that would really make your audience go, wow, ganda. I'd probably share this. Wow, meron palang ganito. So this is the wow moment that you're looking for. A second idea for a hero content is a brand film. So if I were to think of a brand that would usually have a brand film, I'd think of consumer good brands from Unilever, from P&G. So for example, occasionally, maybe thrice a year or once a quarter, Cream Silk or Sunsilk or even Surf would release their main TVC or video or online film. And this TVC is something that they'll continue to refresh, they'll continue to cut, edit down in different ways. But it would strongly deliver the key message of that campaign or feature their endorser for that period. The next is hub. So, hub content naman is regular engaging content that meets your target audience's needs. So, this one is usually pull content. So, the main objectives of hub would be awareness, engagement, and user experience. So, how do you know what kind of hub content to post? So, go back to step one, which is doing your social media audit, looking at your audience personas, looking at what kind of content they enjoy, looking at the social listening trends, looking at the hashtags that mention your brand or are related to your brand. So, some examples of this type of content could be ebooks, could be quizzes, surveys, interviews, podcasts, videos, video series, memes, funny content. Lastly, you have your hygiene content. So, this one naman is useful, helpful content that people are really searching for. So, the main objective of this is to boost content depth and site relevancy. So this type of content is very functional and something that is triggered by the intent of your customer. So it usually captures users by fulfilling those micro moments that they have before the purchase. So an example I can think of is, for example, I need a moisturizer for the summer. So I searched that on Google. I'm led to a blog post, then that is the brand's hygiene content. It's a blog post that answers my question, but at the same time promotes the product that they feel would answer my need. So some other examples, it could be product page content, could be a blog, or it could be the knowledge or the education portions of a brand page. Lastly, I also wanted to talk about content types. There are so many content types and almost every year may new content type. I mean, a few years ago, wala namang Instagram story, wala namang TikTok. Pero now, meron ng ganon. A few years ago, wala ring live stream, but now it's everywhere. It's on Lazada, Shopee, Facebook. So, there are always new content types, new content tools that will come up. So also try to keep yourself updated there. But here are the most common examples of content on your social media. So I listed it there. So you have your videos, of course. You have infographics. You have behind the scenes, influencer content, user generated content, events, stories. So there's so much. But I think if you classify them by objective, these are the 5 ways to classify it. So the first is educational content. This would usually be your infographics, your FAQs, tips and tricks, how-to posts. The next is content that inspires. So if you are a brand, you can post quotes, trivia, stories of your customers, maybe images, like inspiring images of your customers or your employees. Third is interactive content. So this is something that would really prompt your audience to engage with your brand. So quizzes, polls, games, virtual reality, find the product in this photo, yung mga ganong kind of games that you see on your feed. Next is promotional content. So ito na yung promotions, discounts, if your brand is participating in 11/11 or 10/10, These would be the sale posts that you would post to communicate the discounts. And lastly, you have entertaining content. So, ito yung mga, for example, it could be a seasonal content. So, if you want to greet your audience Happy Mother's Day in a cute way, this is where it would fall. Memes, jokes, viral videos, contests. Recently, may trend din for nostalgic content, so that could also be an idea. So all of that, if you make sure that you mix it up once in a while, so not naman always you should post educational. Minsan, haluan mo rin ng fun content types like entertaining types, interactive types, so that your customer wouldn't be tired of visiting your profile, wouldn't unfollow you. Make sure that there's always something new and fresh that they can get from your social media. So lastly, this step actually leads back to the first step, which is doing a social media audit, reevaluating your strategy based on the data or insights that you get from your social media, determining what works and what doesn't. For sure, your business will go through periods of changes, and social media should always be at the forefront of those changes. Kumbaga, siya dapat yung unang mag-reflect ng changes that you make in your brand. So don't be afraid to make changes, to explore new tools, to test, to learn. And most importantly, don't be afraid to try new things, risks, anything that would really set your brand apart. The end, I wanted to share this quote from Michael Brenner, which says content marketing is the gap between what brands produce and what consumers actually want. If you're a brand, it's so easy for you to talk about your product every single post. I'm sure that memorize nyo yan, everything about your product, you would know, and you would want to do all the shop talk and all the sales talk that you can. But social media content marketing is also all about learning what your customers actually want to hear from you and meeting halfway. Always imparting new things to them and knowledge, and at the same time, eventually pushing them down the conversion funnel, eventually leading to more sales, more leads, and helping you achieve your business objectives. So that's what social media is all about. So it's all about giving your consumers what they actually want. So that's it, guys. Thank you so much for listening to the session. I hope you learned a thing or two, and I'm really excited to see your social media brand pages also on my feed sometime in the future. So that's it. Good luck, guys.